Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. I'm Natalie and today we are going to be doing a little bit of work on a Christmas village. So let's just move my camera back just a little. There we go. So we have some white card, some kind of gingerbread coloured card, a piece of dark card. Now you can either go chocolate like I've done here and use this for your roof as well, or if you have a piece of black card to hand, you're going to need that. You're going to need a ruler, a pencil or pen, a notepad, and tape. So you want to have a strong tape for your seams, which is either going to be your red tape or your blue tape, depending on which make you have. And then you're going to need just a normal double-sided for adhering the detail. So this is a nice thin tape. It's going to give us lots of opportunities to actually adhere the front of our house. So you are also going to need today your standard cutting mat and also your scan mat. So I thought it might be fun to do something where we need both, so you can see how your scan mat is used in your day-to-day crafting. So first of all, let's do the hellos. So hi Deb, hi Thea, and you can watch us live currently on Facebook, YouTube or Twitch. So if one of those doesn't work for you, try something else and one of them will work great. So for today, we are going to be working with designs that are on our machines in terms of the scan and cut. But I would say is if you want to do this on a silhouette or Cricut, then what you are going to be looking for is the same key points I'm going to be making throughout the stream anyway. So you'll be able to find something that is equivalent for your platform. Morning Delcy. And without too much further ado, let me just move the chat because it's a little bit of an odd place there. Let's get the chat. Where's it gone? There it is. So I'm going to move that up into this top corner up here. There we go. So with that done, I'm going to pop to the scan and cut. So for this first bit, we want to find a nice detailed house image. So this is what we are going to probably be cutting from the white card. Now in some cases you might want to swap it round. It really does depend on the design of house that you choose, but I will go a bit more into that in this next bit. So we're going to go into designs and we're going to go into the section that has a clock and knife or towel. And at the top you can see that we have these two houses. Now those of you that are on lower end models, so older CMs and so on, you may not have the design that I'm going to use today. You can use these ones, but what you are going to want to do is probably use this one and just have this bottom bit as a rectangle. So basically what we're going to be doing is cutting off anything that is a roof. So in this case we want this bit round here gone. Okay. Now on higher end models you're going to be able to jump right down to the bottom using that double arrow. I'm on. And you can see that we've got a selection of more detailed houses that we can use. So we could use this one here where it's more on its side, but what I would say is where you've got all this detailing in the roof, you could potentially end up cutting that off. So just bear that in mind, that what you're really looking at is just the bottom section here. We could use the Tudor house just here and we'll just chop off the chimney. If we're going to use this one here, what we would do is cut across our roof on these two thin bits there and there, but we can keep this little up and down bit in the middle if you want. Okay, and then basically these two are going to treat exactly the same, just chop off the tops of your towers. So I'm going to go for the Tudor house, like so. Now what I would say is this is very detailed on this end piece, and what you've got to remember is that when you come to do your side piece, depending on how wide you make it, you're going to have to match that level of detail if you want to have it so that it looks like you can put it on an angle. If you're just going to put it flat, it doesn't matter. Okay, size wise, so when we're talking about Christmas Village, it's going to be something that you're going to create more than one of, and you want to do different designs. So what I would say is try and set yourself a scale to work with. So it could be that all your houses are 55mm wide, and that's absolutely fine to do that, just so that they look consistent. It could be that you say, well, actually all my houses are going to be 8cm tall. That's also fine. And then when you start to get into churches and things, then you can make them a bit taller. So, as I'm going to be working with an A5 piece of card, I kind of want to be able to divide my card into 4, so that I have enough for 2 sides and my 2 feature pieces. It might be that my side piece that I've got there is going to be slightly taller because it looks like a side rather than a front. But then we can put our panel that's going to go adjoining that just in this top section here, and we can rotate it around to go over here. So we just want to make sure that we're trying to stick within our card. So as a default, it's going to come through at 10cm tall. So just grab your ruler, and it's easier to see these things in real life sometimes. So let's just pop overhead. So at 10cm tall, it's going to come up to here. Well, in actual fact, I think that's going to be a bit big for what I need. I need to bring it right down, and I'm going to say about 7cm tall is going to be plenty. So, hopping back to my scanner cut, we're going to take that height and we're going to take it down to 70. Okay, gives us a nice round figure, so that's a good start. And we can go OK, and we can choose which layer we want to use. So at the moment you can see that we've got both the detail and the solid. Now what I would say is it's really easy for you to use this step, cut the solid out of the ginger and skip your scan altogether. But what if you don't have that option with your particular design? So that's what I'm going to show you with the scan mat as well, just so that you can actually go back through and go, actually, there you go, job's done. So let's start off with our detail panel, which is our middle one, and we're going to go OK. Now we need 2, and we can go apply that to our mat. Now one of those is going to go at either end. Now we could assume that they are symmetrical, but assumptions are never good. So I'm going to tap one of them, go into Edit, Object Edit, and flip it. Now this is where that little chimney comes in really handy, because we can see straight away that they're going to end up with the chimney on the same side. Okay, all well and good so far. Now my advice would be at this point is to cut this out. So even though you might be thinking, well hang on, if I cut that out then how do I know where my sides go and all the rest of it? Basically, if I put back overhead, our house at its maximum height is 7cm tall. So even if our joining panel was going to be 7 centimetres tall, it would still fit. Okay? But in actual fact, we know it's going to be lower because it's going to be coming down to where the bottom of the roof is. So we know there's plenty of room. Okay, so time to grab our cutting mat. We're going to take our card and we're going to pop it onto our mat. Now hopefully your mat's nice and sticky. If it's not, you could use a little tape just to hold this in place, but we should be alright. Always check though. Yes, it's holding its own, so off we go. Load the mat into the machine. Okay, so we've got our two houses here. They're flipped, so we know that they're correct. They're up in the top part of our active area because it does that by default. So what I will do, because we've done that flip, what it can sometimes do, if it's not quite symmetrical, is accidentally overlap your shapes. So if we go into our space saving, and we want to keep it up the same way, but we want to make sure that it's spaced. So we're going to go for the bottom option. So keep everything as is, but just space it out. And it's going to space it out so they're not touching. Now if you want to add more space between them, you can go into the little spanner, and where you've got your pattern interval, we can take that up. So if we say 2, now at this point it hasn't applied that 2 until you press that button again, and then it's going to nudge it across. So we can go OK. And then we can go to cut, and I had a bit of a tidy up at the weekend, so we are looking to use our vinyl blade for our detail, and I've pinched Ian's little skull that I got him. So if you're wondering where that's from, it's from the Red Brick Market in Birmingham. And they're very funky. So I'm going to pop that into my machine. There we go. And I'm going to pop my pressure to 1. Make sure my half cut is turned off. And go OK. Speed I pretty much leave consistently at 1, especially if I'm cutting something that has lots of fragile pieces. It just takes a little bit more care as it's kind of running through that design. Oh, there we go. So, any questions while we're waiting for that to cut? It could be that maybe you've been crafting over the weekend and you've had a bit of an issue. Or something you thought of that you'd like to ask if it works. So as the file's quite detailed, you are going to find that the cut time is going to be a little bit longer. So at the moment it's saying 5 minutes. Can I ask why you're using a vinyl blade when you're cutting card? I missed the beginning, so you may have said. Okay, so the vinyl blade tends to be a bit of a misnomer when it comes to how I use it. So while I do use it for vinyl, I'll also use it for anything that is detailed, just so that we get nice finishes in the corners. So particularly if you are cutting an angle that is less than 90 degrees, so something that's like this, where we want to make sure that point goes to a nice point. I'm also using a brother mat today, which is why my pressure's higher. If you're using an Artistix mat, it will go back to my usual pressure, which is typically -6 for the vinyl blade and -9 for the standard auto. And that's because the Artistix mats are thicker. So if you are someone who uses the cricket mat on top of your brother mat, not recommended, but if you do it, then just remember to compensate with your pressure. The other point to say is if you're cutting something that is particularly thick, so at the moment I'm using sort of 220 GSM card, but if you're cutting something that's more like 1mm thick, for instance, then you are better off hopping back to your brother mats just to give you enough clearance in terms of your scan glass. So yeah, I do actually highly recommend the vinyl blade, not just because of the blade itself, but also because of what it enables in terms of canvas. So somebody was asking on one of the forums the other day about how you cut designs that are much larger than your machine, and that's using a function called tiling, which basically splits your design. And you can choose whether that split includes an overlap for gluing. So if you're cutting it from something that isn't adhesive, like card, then you can do a glued overlap to join it up. Or you can have it with no overlap for things like vinyl. So if you want to do a huge design for your wall and you haven't got a roll feeder, then you can use tiling to do that too. And hey to viewers over on Twitch. So what we're doing is we are cutting out a intricate Tudor house. So it's got lots of beams. But I'm doing it out of white card because I want to make it look like a gingerbread Tudor house. Okay, so let's get that off the mat. And because it's a multi-part design, it is going to come up asking you if you want to cut the next part. So if you're doing something like this where it's got the solid as well, you can say select the next part and you're going to cut it out with a different card. So let's first of all get this one off the mat so you can see it. Okay. So this is quite intricate, so let's just pop this out. I'm just going to very gently just ease this off. So you can get your spatula underneath it for the first part, but then when it gets to the really intricate bit, your fingers are going to be the best way. And just take your time. There we go. We've got our first bit of our house. So we can go through the most solid bit of your design to kind of get that initial section. But if you notice here, if I was to carry on pushing that through, it's going to lightly catch when we come up to the top of our window. So let's just pick it up so you can see it. So we don't want to be pushing that and potentially ripping our design after it's just done all that hard work for us. So I'm just going to take its time. Let's release that bit just there. There we go. And we have our mirror image. So then when they're back to back, you can see that the chimneys are on the same side. Now obviously we don't need those, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Now time to clean off the mat. So this is where we can be a bit more aggressive. Now in terms of keeping your mats clean, what are the best options? A lint roller is going to help you where you've got lots of little bits like this. So basically once you've done this initial kind of loosening, the lint roller will just scoop those up for you and away you go. But if your card has actually kind of welded itself to the stick of your mat and it's coming off in two pieces, so let's see if I can get it to do it. If it only took off, no, it's not going to do it for me. If it only took off the top layer and you still got lots of bits of paper, like the backing paper left behind, then what you want to do is just get a paper wipe, make sure it's an alcohol free one, scent free, moisturiser free and all the rest of it. Wrap it around an old credit card or your vinyl scraper, and then you can actually just literally attack it and just give it a really thorough scrape. So nearly got all those off. There you go, didn't need the lint roller at all. And let's just get those in the rubbish. So as I said, I spent all the weekend kind of tidying up. Okay. So as I said, if your design has the solid already, then you can just cut that next part and that's absolutely fine. But let's say it doesn't. Where do you go? So, welcome to your scan mat. And when you get your scan mat, you're going to find that it has a blue strip of plastic attached along this white strip. You're going to remove that and throw it away because chances of you being able to get it back on here are pretty slim. Okay, now what you do want to make sure is that you keep this strip nice and clean because that's what it uses for its contrast measuring. Okay, then you have this plastic cover on the front and that stays attached. That is literally there to hold whatever you put in your scan mat in place. I'm going to put my bit of card in like so. And this is just going to give us a background for our white to sit on. So because we've cut this top layer from white, because that's what we're going to be using for it, then what you want to make sure is that you put dark colour underneath it so you get good strong contrast with your scan. Now what I would say is, before you go too much further, let's snip off these chimneys. like so, because we don't need it. And the reason is we're going to actually build a roof, so these would just get in the way and make life a little bit more tricky. If you want to put a chimney back on after, you can. So we know that this is the same design, just flipped, so we only need to scan one. We're going to pop that back over the top like so, and then we can load that into our machine. So going back to our machine, which is still saying select the next part or finish, we're just going to tell it to finish, because I'm happy with that. It's done, it's dusted. We can go home to reset and OK. Now, before we load our scan mat, I'm going to take my blade out. So that's so that we don't accidentally catch the corner. It's particularly more important in the CM models as opposed to the SDXs, as the SDX blade will naturally cover itself, but the CM won't. So then we can load our scan mat. And we're going to go to scan, but we want to cut the solid shape out of a different card. So we're going to go scan to cut data, and it's going to say, okay, but what mode do you want to do it in? We're going to go to our spanner, and we're going to say black and white, because we've got a nice high contrast between the white and the chocolate. Then in terms of scan area, we can actually make our lives a little easier. So it measures your scan area from your top left corner, which is why typically you'll find that I start my scans up in that corner. So looking at my design, I can get away with a 4x6 area. So if I scroll down, it's not going to let me choose that one. Okay, so 12x6 then, that's fine. And the reason that we do that is we're kind of limiting the amount of time, the amount of processing it's got to do. So let's go OK, OK again, and off you pop. It's going to scan halfway down the map and come back, because we've told it to only scan that top 6 inches. Much quicker, and it doesn't have to use as much computing power. And we have our top half scan. Now, a little bit of a word of caution about the measurement. When it says that it's going to scan 12x6, it does scan 12x6, but it's not going to necessarily recognise the bottom inch of that. So if you have something that goes up to and smack bang on your 6 inches, then you should do a full 12x12 scan. Just so that you're aware. Okay, so with the little house there, we want to do a trace line. This is going to go around. Okay, so we're going to select the first option, and you're going to see that your trace line, it looks like it's very slightly dark. Let's see if I can just get that to pick that up a little bit better. And wait for it to focus. There we go. So you can see you've got a faint black outline, and that's where it's tracing at the moment. And that's pretty much spot on. So at this point we can zoom back out. Lift up a little bit. There we go. And we're going to go OK. And it's going to give you an option of where you can save that file, and you want to be able to remember where you saved it to. Quite important. So in most cases what I'll do is I'll do it to the machine, but if you've run out of room, don't panic, because you can either delete something that you've already stored on your machine, or you can go cancel and it's still got that file there, and you can send it to USB. Okay, when it's saved to USB, it is not going to give it a logical name. It is literally going to use the next number in the list. So what I would say is, if this is something that you are going to want to replicate, so let's say you're making to sell, then you would want to take that USB, put it into your computer, change the file name on there and pop it back in your machine. So the machine doesn't mind if you change the name, it just doesn't have that function of being able to let you enter one. Okay, so that's now saved that initial outside trace. Okay, so we can really go home and okay, because we've got that outside trace. We can unload the mat, because all you'll ever do with your scan mat is scan. So either scan to cut data or scan to an image. And we're going to swap back to our standard tack mat. So, back overhead. I'm going to pop my card back up into that top left corner. And we're going for the gingerbread colour this time. And then we can load that into the machine. So we're going to go retrieve data because it's something that we've saved. It's saved to the USB. And we know that the file name starts with a U. So chances are, even if you've got a mix of names on your USB, it's going to be down towards the bottom. So if we press the double arrow to jump down to the bottom of our list, and then we can scroll back up, and you're going to find it's there just before all your kind of file names. Okay, so there's number 77. We can pop this onto the mat, and we have one there. Now at the moment you can see that we've still got that notch out for the doorway, so you can choose whether you want to keep that. For instance, it would be a handy way of putting in some windows if you want to manually cut out some windows. But what I would say is, if you want to just have it so it's a solid house, we can actually fix that window. So I'm going to go into Edit, Object Edit. Now, if we were to duplicate it at this point and then flip, then we end up fixing the window twice. If that helps you as a beginner to kind of remember that you need to do that flip, that is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with doing that, especially when you're working with textured card. If, however, you just want to do it the really quick way, we're going to go OK. Let's fix the doorway first. So we're just going to go into Pattern, into Basic Shapes, and pick any kind of like rectangle, square. I'm going to size it down, not too far, but enough that we know it's going to knock out the door, and add that onto my mat. Now we're going to bring that over the top, and it's still a little bit wide, so let's shrink it down a little bit more so it fits easily within our house bounds. So Object Edit, resize, take that down. Okay, so we can see it's well within the outside of our house shape. We can see that the right hand edge is further than the right hand side of the door. We're going to go OK and OK, and we're going to go into multi-select. This is where we select more than one shape. So we're going to select everything, because that's all that's on our mat, is those two shapes. Now with those two selected, obviously at this point if we were to weld them, we'd still have the bottom with that door open, which isn't what we want. So I'm going to go into Move, I'm going to go into a line, and then we're going to line to bottom, like so. So we know those two bottom cut lines are exactly overlapping. And I'm going to go OK. Now, if this house was the solid shape from out of the machine, you would know for certain that it is directly on the straight layer at the bottom. So you wouldn't have to check. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap off. Okay, I'm going to go to zoom, and I'm going to zoom in, because you want to check that if your house is slightly on the monkey in either direction, then you need to put your rectangle so it's going to be on the monkey too, so that they match. So I'm going to scroll down and let's have a look. Okay, if we look at this bottom line here and up the side here, we can see that there is a very, very slight skip in that line. So let's see if I can just get it close enough for you that you can see that. Wait for it to focus. Come on. You're doing a lovely job of panning, but I really need you to focus, camera. There we go. So it's really slight. So that means it's only a fraction out. Now, in the shapes in your machine, you can only rotate by 1 degree, which sounds like it's going to be really an intricate way of adjusting that rotation. But when we get into kind of leveling things up, what you're going to find is that 1 degree is actually usually way too big. You're looking at half a degree and sometimes even a 0.1 of a degree to get things perfectly straight. So how can you get around it? What I would say is if you move that shape up, then you're going to get the notch of that door out. If that shape sits below that line, then at least you can trim it off. So if we look here, you can see that there's a very slight drop between the cut line of the house and the red bounding box of a box. So in theory, what we're going to get is a little step like so at the end of our design. So we're going to have somewhere that we can see where it should cut off, and then it's going to be where it does cut off here, and that means that we can essentially join the dots. So we can go, okay, that's fine, and we can sort that out after. So we're going to go back into multi-select, select everything, go okay, object edit and weld, and we're going to take away that doorway like so. Okay, but if you look there, you can just see there's a very slight little kink. So let me adjust that back up so you can see everything, and I'm going to go okay, that's fine, we can sort that. So now we can go into duplicate, set that to 2, and we can flip like so. And we can go okay. Now, what I would say is, because we've done a scan to cut data, you're going to see that the position of our save file hasn't changed, which means that in actual fact we can just take this one and drop it up there, and we can do the same there. Now remember how we did our spacing before? And we can do the same here. I'm just going to move it all up together. Okay, nice and easy, and let that cut out. Now, because it's essentially a bit simpler, what I could do is just swap to the standard auto blade and save a bit of wear on my blade. So let's pop that in. I'm going to go into my settings, and because this is the standard auto blade, I'm just going to drop my pressure down just a little bit. It's not hugely. My blade has seen quite a bit of action, so still needs a fair whack. So it's been doing grey board and lots of fun things behind the scenes. So it pops. So you may be wondering at this point why I got you to get a ruler out. And that's because we're going to need to measure these side pieces to be able to do the sides of our house. Okay, let's have a look at it. Oh, you did so well to the end. There we go. Just pop that out. So, one house, two houses, and looks like there's a very slight difference in the roof, so let's get the right one for the right house. So, and that one's going to be that one. And let's go overhead so you can see. So we've got one house there and one house there. Now, before we go too much further, at this point you can go, okay, I'm going to stick those two together. So there's nothing miraculous about this. It's just a case of let's get some tape and we can put that together as a flat panel. Now what I would say is with anything that is kind of sticking out or likely to curl up over time, then just do make sure that you stick it down well. So for instance, this bit around the door, we're going to want to make sure that that's stuck down well, because there's nothing worse than kind of going to all the effort of creating these for them to get damaged over time. Okay, I'm going to put this one across here. Now what I would do for the live today is just show you this one assembled, and then I can pop the other one on after we've kind of finished. So you want to apply your tape along your roof line too. And I think that's probably it. If you've got a glue pen, then with these little bits in here, then you can just pop along there. So what I would say is, if you're not used to watching these lives, then I can see initial comments, particularly on Facebook, but I can't see replies, which is very annoying. So if I haven't answered a question that you've posted as a reply, either post it again now or drop me a message. So I'll be about for a bit on Facebook, just while I'm doing a bit of design work. There's always one, isn't there, that's the backing's like, nah, I don't want to come off. Come on. Okay. So we want to make sure that we get all these little bits of backing tape off, particularly around this doorway, as we've taken such care to make sure that it's all sticky. Come on, little elves. I don't blame the nails. There we go. So I'm going to stick this one down first. Okay. And like so. I'll put it up. Now, what we need to do next is we need to measure our sides. So, you want to have a ruler that you know is nice and easy for you to get an accurate measurement. So, I have a T-ruler, and what you can't see, let me just move the camera, is I have it hooked over my glass mat, so it can't go anywhere. I'm then going to take my house, take the bottom straight edge, and I'm going to line that up against my ruler. So just push that there, like so. And I can see that the side going up into the eaves, so right up in here, is about 3.5 centimetres. So that's going to be our magic figure. So basically what we want is our side piece here is going to come along this edge and the inside here. So if you're wondering why I haven't done windows yet, that is why. If you end up cutting holes through windows and then putting your adhesive behind, and sometimes you can find that your adhesive tabs go a bit too far, whereas sometimes it's just easy to just leave them as is and then cut the holes out after. So I'm going to start off by using the ginger piece this time, and that's to create the solid panel first. Okay, so I'm going to pop my card back onto my mat. I'm going to use one of the uncut sides to go up into that top left hand corner, and whichever one happens to have more room. So we know that this dimension here is 35mm, but then the decision that we have to make is how far we want our side to go. So if you're sticking this inside, let's say a pop-up card for instance, you might only want that to be 1 centimetre. If you are doing a fully fledged, lovely landscaped Christmas village, then you are probably going to want to do it a bit deeper, so say 3 to 4 centimetres deep. So the options are yours. So I'm going to go with probably about 3 centimetres. And it is a bit like stick a finger in the air and kind of guess which way you're going, because there is nothing at this point that ties you to a figure. So I'm going to go into pattern, and I'm going to go for a flat rectangle, because I know that basically my side is going to be narrower than its height, but at the moment it's sideways. So we could use ratio to kind of squeeze it and put it where we want to. But to be honest, sometimes it's just easy to leave what it is and go, okay, I need this top figure to be 36. Let's go for the 30 actually. And then once it's there, then we can go our ratio button. It's not always the easiest to see past the camera. And then we're going to take that down to 36. There we go. So we've got our 30 by 36 rectangle. And we're going to need 2, because we need it to make a box. And we're going to add that onto the mat. Okay, so at this moment in time we've kind of got sides, but there's nothing holding it together. So you've got 2 options, and it really does depend on how confident you feel with your machine. What you can do is you can cut your glue tabs separately. So beginners in particular, if you're not confident with using things like align and distribute, you can cut your shape separately. and that is fine. That is not saying that you are doing anything wrong. It's just literally making your life a little simpler. And if we're going to add into pattern into our basic shapes, those actually a shape that can help you. So I'm going to jump on down, and BAA043 is actually really useful as a glue tab. So even if you then weld it to another shape, that's fine. But it's there as a kind of an assist, because you can use it either side and so on and so forth. So again, we know that our longest measurement needs to be 36. So we can take that down to 36 first of all. Now that's going to give us a height of 18 mil. Divide that into 2, you've got 9 mil. So that's how wide your glue tab's going to be. So judge that by your tape. If you have a 9mm tape, then yep, that's fine. If you have a narrower tape, then what you can do is use your ratio function to just kind of take that in a little bit, so you're not having to use so much card. Simple as. So I'm going to go to number, and we need 4 of those, 1 for each corner. Okay, and we're going to set that in. Now those glue tabs, we're going to score from the longest point to longest point. Okay, as a beginner. If you want to get a bit cleverer, then what we're going to do is we're going to take our rectangle and we're going to lie it over the top. Then we're going to take another of our glue tabs and we're going to lie that over the top, like so. And we can do the same over here, so line up that rectangle, line up the glue tab. Now this is only roughly at the moment, so if you're thinking, but they don't look the same, don't worry yet, we're not there yet. So I'm going to go into edit and multi-select, and this is where we can use our window select so that you can work on one tab at a time. So we're going to drag it across and it's just going to select the elements that are in that tab. I'm going to go OK. I'm going to go OK again. I'm going to go into move and into align, and this is where we can say okay, everything is the same height, so we're going to align it to the centre like so, and already it looks that little bit neater, and we can go OK. Now I'm going to tap off the shapes so that I just have one selected, and that means that we can just nudge this bottom shape, and we can even nudge the rectangle at the middle, just so that we know that it's sitting in the middle of this shape here. Nudge this one down so that everything looks like it's nice and even. So let's zoom that in and wait for it to focus. So hopefully you haven't got too much glare. And if you want to take a screenshot of how I'm doing this, that is absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to go OK. Then I can go back into multi-select, back to my window select, select just that half again, go OK. OK, object edit, and we can weld that together like so. We'll go OK. Now at this point you can't go back to how you had those individual shapes. Okay. If you want to add a score line, then if we go back to our original here, we can take that centre box and just draw the centre box actually within this shape using either a score tool a worn out biro. Basically anything that has a nice smooth ball action on the end of the tool, so any embossing tool, so on and so forth, so that you get a score line. Now with this set here, we could go through and we could do all that all over again, but what I'm going to do instead is actually go delete. Let's delete that one, delete that one. Let's take this one, and I'm going to go to duplicate and 2. Okay. So we know that we've cut out of our card, but if we look at the grid on our screen, we can see that our shapes literally get to just below the 2-inch marker. If we look at our mat, so let me see if I can adjust the camera and focus down here. There we go. There's our 2-inch marker. If we follow that across, we can see that there's no cut line in that space. So we don't need to do a background scan. If you found that you were interfering with a previous cut, then just do a background scan and move it accordingly. So back we go. We're going to go okay, 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 and we're going to cut this one out. Now there's nothing intricate about that at all because they're all nice obtuse angles, so we can just go, yeah, that's fine, and off you go. So while that's doing that, I'm just going to quick tape up this side very quickly. Now you can do this much neater than I'm doing it. So these white sections aren't actually load bearing as such, so it's just about whether they'll be caught on in storage or clothing. Tinsel. So let's just pop a bit of tape along there. That should be done. So in terms of your side detail, you kind of have a choice of how detailed you want to go. And obviously I could spend hours going through how to match the Tudor style of this one. If you just want to keep it nice and simple, you can do that too. So how would you go about doing something like this where it's super duper intricate? And what I would recommend doing is kind of dividing it up so that you have lots of thin rectangles, and each one of those thin rectangles can be one of these lines, because essentially your side pieces are just going to be nice straight rectangles, so you can kind of go as intricate as you want. So there we go. So that is going to stick like so. Then that's going to hinge back to do your side, and job done. So let's very quickly just score these pieces, and you can use your scoreboard just to do a nice neat job. Even though it looks like it's a bit overkill for such a tiny item, it is worth doing properly. There we go. So bone folder or embossing tool. I'm just going to follow down from where our two long points are. So if I move that back, that would help. There you go, so that you can see where I'm going. It's no good, I need a cameraman. And that one. And there we go. So always work your fold first and pay particular attention to the outside edges of your fold, because you'll find that they tend to like lift as you fold them. So you just want to make sure that that presses down. Okay. So, especially on textured cardstock like this, just take a little extra time just to press those folds. So there you have something like that. So it's a little U shape. Now when you attach your tape, rather than using the brown one that I have been using for the front panels, this is when you're going to swap to something a bit stronger. So let's find the end of my tape. Now, what I would say is, as these are going to be working folds, take your tape past the cut edge. So if I flick it over, you can see what I mean. So that your adhesive goes right up to that cut edge. And the reason that I say to do that is that if you don't, it can have a tendency to kind of start to pull. Whereas if it's all sticky, it's got no option but to stay put. That's the theory anyway. And when I'm placing my tape, I'm going right up to that score line edge rather than going through the middle of the tab. Again, so that we're kind of removing the opportunity for it to start to fight back. There we go. And you can do that to both sides. Now, as I'm using texture card, the other thing to say is that you might want to do button braces, as in also using wet glue. Because obviously with any texture that you do, the tape is going to stick to the top of it. And if it's something like this where you've got lots of fine indents, actually if I can get the camera to focus, then essentially something like 50% of your card isn't going to be in contact with that adhesive. So burnish down well before taking off the backing tape. And it should make it easier to get the backing off. That's a very big shot though. So let's pull in our house. Now, roofs for houses in pop-up cards are slightly different to how you would do it for a Christmas village. Christmas village, nice and easy, believe it or not. It's just going to be an up and over. So you're just going to use your ruler to just measure that top edge. What did I say about backing paper coming off? Let's see if I've got a polka doll. I got something better. So sometimes you have to bring out the big guns. So these are tweezers that you normally use for weeding your vinyl, but they're also pretty good at getting backings off your tape. Now they're quite sharp, which is why they have like a little protector cap. So just be aware and cautious with, particularly with little fingers that may not realise just how sharp they are. Get them. There we go. And then once you've got a little bit lifted, you can just turn them around so that you're using the wider part of the hook. So if I hold it over the weight, you should be able to see it a bit better. So it's basically like a little hook tool, but then this pointy end here is really sharp. Next bit of advice is to stand up your house. Okay, so I'm going to stand it up and let's see if I can swap hands. And this could be interesting doing it left-handed, but I'm going to basically have my house stand up, and I'm going to have my card this side stand up, and we're going to introduce the fold together. Now once you're happy that it's lined up, then you can press everything down. We're just going to check first. There we go. And press that down, and we've got the start of our house. So now we want to peel off the other side. There we go. And we're finding little bits of blue tape everywhere. It's gone very quiet on the chat out there. So, with that bent, again, stand it up. So the standing up is helping me keep that bottom base level, because otherwise if you don't, you can get a bit of like a kind of almost like rocking effect. So if you want your house to stand up nicely, just want to make sure that you get that side where it needs to go. Okay, and then we've got our two sides here. So I'll stick this bit on in a bit. And now with this back section, just going to do the same there, so it lines up. It's a bit more tricky to do this one down on the desk, just because of getting fingers in, but if your house is a bit bigger, then you can use the same method. There we go. So we have the start of our house. Grab your ruler and let's pop it onto the white so we can see it a little bit easier. And you'll just want to put the tip of your roof into our corner there, and basically our roof is 4.5 centimeters in terms of length. So that means that our piece of card just needs to be 9 centimeters to get up and over, and you can allow a little bit extra if you want to, but then you've got your 3 centimeters to get from there to there, and then you can add on glue tabs just to support that roof structure in the same way. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to go away and do the roof, and then I'll pop up a picture onto the group. So if you are on Facebook and you aren't part of the group yet, you're looking for Scan and Cut and Papercraft courses, classes and workshops by Plannercraft. So take care for now, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.